Good morning everybody, and welcome to part 3 of building the DJH G5 kit. And what we're going to do today is we're going to do pages 3 and 4 of the instructions. So with a bit of luck, at the end of today we will have a working chassis and the chassis will be finished. So if you remember from the last time, we've made our basic chassis. We've put the front and rear guard irons in, the buffer beam supports which are all part of that, the frame spacers, the wheel bearings and the motor mount. And now we're going to move on to page 3, which consists of doing the brake gear. And now we're going to encounter our first white metal parts. Now what I've done is I've taken the parts out that I need for my particular locomotive. If you remember from the last time, I mentioned that it is possible to have, if you can see on the instructions there's intermediate sanding. Now that wasn't fitted to all locomotives, and what you'll have to do is you will have to look up and find out whether the locomotive you want to model did have the intermediate sanding gear. The one that I'm doing, 67342 or 408, didn't have intermediate sanding gear, so I'm not going to fit it. So I'm going to ignore those castings. So what I've done is I've removed the castings that I need. So I've got 2 sandboxes, which are the rear sandboxes, which I've cleaned up. I have the casting, which is the dummy valve, dummy inside motion, which sits on top of the frame. That's part number W27. I've got the 4 brake shoes, which are, again, they're white metal castings and they will need drilling a bit later. I've got this part, which is the air brake cylinder. If you remember what I said, most of these locomotives had air brakes rather than steam brakes for the locomotive, so you get that. I've also got, out of my wire and glazing and wire pack, although I haven't used the wire, I've got some 2mm rod, which is for the brake shaft, and I've got some 1mm brass rod, which is for the sand pipes and the brake tie bars. So that's all prepared. I've also got an M2 16mm bolt, which is for the bogie mounting post, and you can't see it, but take my word for it, there's a nut in there which is for that bolt. And I've also got the last bit of the nickel silver remainders of the nickel silver etch, and most of the parts on this will go in this recording. What I'm going to do is, rather than remove the etch parts, because the brake rods do look quite delicate, I'm leaving the brake rods, the brake pull rods, in the etch, so that when I drill them, there's no chance of them being deformed. So the 2 holes at the front, this one and the intermediate one, need to be drilled 1mm, and the one at the rear there needs to be drilled 2mm. In fact, I'm going to use a 2.1mm drill, which I prepared, which is the drill for the mounting holes for all the white metal parts. The white metal parts have the mounting posts on the rear of them are 2.1mm, and I'm going to use a 2.1mm drill instead of a 2mm drill for the brake pull rods. You will also need, out of the kit, you will need the wheels, the driving wheels to set the brake, the brakes and the brake mountings, these parts, you will need the driving wheels so that they're all set correctly. So much the same as I've done with the other one, I am going to show you what I do on camera. However, for the moment, after this introduction, I'm going to go away and drill all the holes that I need to drill. What you need to drill the holes are marked on the instructions. So if you can see there where the brake bits mount, it's got 2.1 with a drill symbol next to it in the box. That's what you need to drill the hole. Very simple. Okay, so I'm going to go away, I'm going to drill the holes, and then I'll come back and then we'll start building stuff. Okay, so we're going to start with the brake operating lever, which is the etched parts E17 and E18. It is important that you do get them the right way round, because one is marked front and the other one is marked rear. So what we're going to do is we're just going to join the two halves together. We're going to tin one part. Very lightly, so that bit's tinned quite nicely, and then we'll join the two together, put a bit of flux on top, one thing to also mention is the end with the end with that goes up into the chassis, the handbrake end, which is the long bit with the split bottom. That bit is quite delicate, so just be careful when you are cleaning up, otherwise you could well damage it a bit, actually, like I've done slightly. So best thing to do, line it up by eye, get it all joined up, and then we'll just go around and do the end first. And then we have the two bits joined together. They're the two bits joined together. This bit goes up into the chassis and this bit goes into the brake cylinder. Now that's done, and what we'll do, we'll just give it a quick clean up. That's not too bad. So they're the two halves joined together, and what we'll do is we'll put that to one side for the moment, and we will do this small part which I haven't mentioned. I need tweezers to actually show it to you. It's this U-shaped part, which is part number E23. And what that is, it's actually the damper control for the rear of the ash pan. So in the ash pan, there's a fork at the top, which you can't see, and there's a hole at the bottom, and this part goes into those two slots. So what we'll do is we'll do that now so that we don't forget it. And then it's out of the way. The long bit goes at the top, and the lower bit goes into the slot in the bottom. So just make sure it's seated, and then solder it up, and then you can forget about this particular part. Normally I would leave small bits off towards the end, but I don't think this bit is going to be particularly vulnerable. So hopefully I'm going to be proved correct. So we'll do this bit first. I'm also doing it first because I think that it will be a little bit awkward to get to later once all the brake gear is fitted. So there we go. That's so there it is. Hold on, let's drag it over. You can see it. There it is. It's fitted. Tiny part. And now we'll get on with the valve gear, the brake gear. I beg your pardon. So, like most kit building, where you have a mixed media kit, it is the easiest thing to do is to do the bits that have the highest melting point should be done first. So obviously white metal is melts at a lower temperature. So what we're going to do as many of the brass and nickel silver fittings as we can do first. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to fit the 2mm brake operating rod. Now you need to allow at least 8mm either side of the pivot points here and here. You need to have at least 8mm on either side. So what we'll do, we'll just check that we've got at least 8mm. So we'll give it 10. And that will give us a bit of room so we can trim stuff off. So we'll do this side. Like I said, you don't need to be too precise on this, just at least 8mm on either side. So there's our pull rod, and then what we will do is we will trim this side. We'll use our inox cutters because we can cut this big. Use the flat end. There we go. So there's the brake operating rod, and then we just need to check that the piece that we made a little bit earlier still fits on it. So it doesn't fit on it, so what we'll do, we'll just run. We kept our 2.1mm drill handy. I have to use it in the drill. Right, there's our operating piece, and if you remember at the end I said this bit, I left this bit bent up, but now I've bent it down so that it's perpendicular to the side of the chassis. Just check that it's the right height, and then before you go any further, because this is bits that like that which have got part bends in are always going to be vulnerable. So we're just going to reinforce the bend with a tiny bit of solder. So flux it, and then just get the solder to flash, and that's strengthened. So we'll go back to this part again and just try it out. So we're just trying it out roughly. We're not trying it out for keeps, because there's some bends that need putting in this, and it says in the instructions how to bend the part in question. So that's okay. The hole in there fits in the fits over the operating rod, and then we'll just clean it up a little bit more. Right, so the next bit that we need to do these. We need to do the brake operating rods. Now it says it says in the big box in the instructions, it says fit detail thickening etch on the outside. Now they are connected to the main bit, the main part, and I've left them connected. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it much the same as I did with the coupling rods, is that I'm going to leave them attached and bend them over rather than detach them. So I'm going to bend them over like that, and hopefully they'll be handed. So we'll just check. Okay, I've made them handed, so I'll just put a little bit of solder on that to strengthen them up. So that's one done, and then we'll clean them off. Okay, so the two brake operating rods, they've both been cleaned off, and I should have a handed pair. So that one is on that side. Right, so I fitted the first two brake shoes, and I've got the brake pull rod and one of the cross rods. So I've not soldered anything or cut anything up at the moment, just to make sure that it all fits. So the idea is that this rod here is parallel to the chassis side, and these rods are not, cross rods are not under tension. So if you get the first one right, the second one should fall nicely into place. So I can see that that's not being pushed by that. As we had a little bit of an accident with the other push rod, we'll just move this one over to the other side temporarily, and just to make sure that it isn't being pushed, and it's not being pushed. I can feel that it's not being pushed. So that means that these two brake shoes here are in the correct position. They're not touching the wheel treads. You need to make sure that they don't touch the wheel treads at all. For obvious reasons, you'll get a short when you come to do the pickup. So now what we'll do, again, if you remember, we need to allow 8mm at least either side. So that's 12, and that's, so we'll cut it off about here. Just take it out, and to save a bit of time, we'll cut that rod twice. So we've now got two pull rods, cross rods rather, for the brakes, and we'll now solder this one in place. And on this occasion I will reduce the soldering iron temperature, and I've already got it programmed in my soldering iron. Well, I hope I've got it programmed in my soldering iron. Yes, right, so it's programmed into my soldering iron, and I'm going to set the iron to 315 degrees to solder this cross rod. So just hold it in place, just make sure that we've got at least 8mm either side, and we have. So a little bit of .145 on either side. You're only soldering wire, so, or brass rod, it shouldn't really matter that the temperature is lower than normal. Make sure that you have at least 8mm either side. Flux both sides, and with the white metal solder from the inside. Right, that should pull through nicely, and it has. Where's the autofocus thing? Okay, so there is the first cross rod. Now we'll move on and do the second one. So Like I said, we don't want to unwrap our other set of wheels yet, so we'll just undo this one because we need to remove the wheels later, so there's no point putting both of them on and then taking both of them off again. So that's come off. You'll need to, because the brake shoes are quite close, you'll need to, you can't cheat like leave one wheel attached. You've got to take both wheels off the axle. Okay, so sometimes you have a little bit of a difficulty with Slater's axles. All you need to do is just run a file over the square bit at the end if the wheels don't go on and off nicely. So like that one is not so good as the other one. So what we'll do is we'll just do this quickly. I should be able to do this by hand if I can find the right bit. There it is. So the front axle is a little bit tight. So we've got our 3/16 parallel thingy, and we'll just run it through so that it's good. And that's much better. There's just a little bit of flash on the so that goes around nicely now that we've done it out. So we'll just put the other one on again, and you don't have to worry about quartering yet. Just do that up. And so we've got our other wheels on, they go round nicely, and we'll do the other two brake shoes, if I can find them. Oh, here they are, underneath the G5 book. So like we did before, except it's a little bit more awkward this time because you've got the projections for the front sanding pipes. So a little bit of flux around the hole. Again, shouldn't matter too much. That keep the soldering iron set to 315. Make sure they're fully seated and that you have a nice gap between the brake shoe and the wheel. That looks good, and we will flux it up again from the inside. White metal solder, and that isn't too bad. We'll just do the other side quickly. Okay, so we've done both the front brake shoes, and I've put the brass rod, the tie rod in, so that you can just judge it by eye, and both of those look pretty parallel. So what we can do, just to check it that it is correct is we use our single tie rod again, and we'll just feed. Well, maybe it'd be easier if we fed it on this end. And that doesn't look too bad. It's not under pressure. We'll put the broken one on the other side. I'll fix that in a minute, off camera. So there we have both sides done, and what I'll do is I'll just do that. That's slightly under tension, so we'll just adjust that ever so slightly. That looks okay, that side's okay. So we'll take those off and we'll solder the cross rod in place. Again, just make sure that there's at least 8mm on either side. And there we have the brake shoes fitted and the cross rods done. Now, while we've still got the front wheels in place, we will think about doing the front sanding gear. And all you need to do for the front sanding gear is fit 2 lengths of 1mm rod, and they fit into the 2 holes in this cross piece which you've drilled out, and they pass behind the brake shoes, so they need a little bit of bending. I'm not going to show you doing that on camera. We've got our 1mm rod here, but it should be relatively simple to do. Don't worry too much about the length at the moment, just sort of fit the wire and bend it roughly to shape. The illustration in the manual is pretty good for that, and it shouldn't be too difficult for you to do that. I'll just enlarge these holes slightly. Right. The other thing that you need to remember now that you've fitted the brake gear, there is also an instruction on page 3 with regards to the brake shoes. They are triangular at the top. Let's see, where's the autofocus thing? They're triangular at the top. They need to be filed flush with the chassis, not left triangular, but we'll do that a bit later. There's no need to worry about that too much now. So we've got our brass rod for our 1mm brass rod, and what we're going to do is we are going to anneal it slightly. Makes it easy because it needs to be curved. So to anneal, take your brass rod, take your flame, hold it where the bright blue bit finishes, and just heat it so it starts to discolour. So that's one bit. The other bit will be the same, I'll just do the one bit. and you can roughly bend it using your fingers. Just take a little bit of juggling to get it in place. That bit needs to go up there. That's it. Yes, it helps if you don't drop it while you're soldering it. And there's the first sanding pipe fitted. Don't worry too much again about the length, just sort of get it roughly correct. You can adjust it a bit later because remember it needs to be clear of the rails, but as you can see it goes behind the brake shoe and out the bottom. So I'm just going to repeat that off camera for the other one and then we'll carry on with the brakes. In the kit you get Slater's pickups, but you only get 4 because obviously there are only 4 picking up from the driving wheels. So what we're going to do, we'll fit the 4. Now, it's always advantageous to have a number of small Ziploc top bags. If you have anything supplied in bags like that, it's always worth keeping them for small items like the 12BA nuts and that come with the pickups, because you should have 8 12BA nuts, but for this bit of the exercise you only need 4. So we will take them out very carefully. We have got some spares if we lose them. And there are also some very, very small springs. If you've never done these before, there is an instruction leaflet in the bit next to where the parts are. So we'll just do these carefully so we don't lose anything. If you're wondering why the lighting has changed, normally when I do these videos I try and get them done by 1 o'clock, but it is a bit later than that today. It's now just gone 2, and where I live the sun goes round into the southwest at about 1:30. If you know, I work for Network Rail and I work shifts, and it's extremely difficult sleeping, especially at this time of the year, because the sun shines straight into the bedroom, and if it doesn't light it up, it heats it up. So I'm working with natural light at the moment, and I've moved around. So what we'll do is we'll get rid of the 4 of the 12BA nuts, put them in our bag, and again with our washers and things, I don't think we'll need those. So the pickups, the holes for the pickups are already etched in the thing. They're the large holes, and they need to be 3.9 millimeters. To fit the grub screws, you'll need a 1.5mm Allen key. So I fitted it, and we'll just give it a test, see how good it is. Before we fit the coupling rods. And it's a little bit noisy, but we can live with that for the moment. It's not too bad. There's a little bit of wear, but we might need to adjust the motor, but we'll worry about that a bit later. And just slightly adjust the motor. Now what we're going to do next is we will fit the coupling rods and just see that it goes round nicely. So we made the coupling rods in the first bit of doing the chassis when we put the chassis bushes in, so it should all work nicely. So we'll put the bush on. We'll use this one. So we've lost a washer. However, we have some spares somewhere. So I fitted the coupling rods, and now what we will do is we will run it up again and we will see what happens. See what voltage we can get it down to. Well, that's 3 volts and it's drawing 0.1 of an amp. So it's a little bit rough, but we will adjust that later. There's no point thinking that it's finished now, because it isn't. But there we go, we'll run it up so it's got a decent voltage going through it. That's 7.5 and that is 0.2 of an amp. So that doesn't run too badly. And that's about it. That's sections 3 and 4 finished. All that is left for me to do, there's a couple of detailing parts that need to be fitted, and there will be an advisory note about these as well. It's the ashpan sides. Now, they are supposed to fit here, and they're supposed to go behind the brake rod pivot, and basically they don't they don't fit, so it's a little bit silly putting them in the instructions at a stage where they can't fit. And there's also spring detail, so the wheel springs, there are 4 detail parts which go on the inside. So they go on this side, the inside. I'll do those as and when. I'll do those before I come back the next time. And the other parts left are the balance weights on the wheels, and I'll do those the next time. So what we've got is we've got a chassis with the brake gear on, with the inside motion, with the pickups, with the wheels fitted, with the motor fitted, and that is about it for stages 3 and 4. I will say to you once again, please be very careful with the brake pull rods on the outside. They are quite delicate, although they are quite thick etched parts. You need to be quite careful with them. They're easy to break, and well, I broke this side. Luckily I managed to repair it, so it's not too obvious. Once it's painted it will be okay. So thank you for watching, and the next time we will do a wash up on the chassis. I'll do some adjustments to the chassis to get the motor running a bit sweeter, and I'll let you know what I've done, rather than do it on camera, because who knows how long the video will be otherwise. But that is the chassis, near as possible, completed. Thank you for watching. See you the next time.